Drop it.
The name is Liru, and this is the agricultural debate. Hamada expressed its unlimited support for the small-scale farmers in an article that was published in the Chronicle this past week. And that article has brought us to today's debate: small-scale farming versus large-scale farming. Why not support large-scale farmers who must produce for everyone? They are also the people who sell a lot and brings in foreign currency. I actually do not have all the answers to those questions, but I've got two gentlemen here who are going to help me find answers to those questions. Gents, welcome to the show. May you please introduce yourselves to the viewers?
Okay, I'm going to okay on behalf of farmers in Zimbabwe and she presents small scale farmers.
Okay, over to you, sir.
Thank you. I'm Bimoyo, standing for large scale farmers.
Okay, that's fine. We're going to start with you, Mr. Tony. Why do you think that small-scale farming is more beneficial, or why would you prefer small-scale farming?
Okay, I would prefer small scale farming because in small scale farming we improve the whole community instead of improving one individual.
Yes.
So
And?
I think it's best that we can support small scale farming because small scale farmers as compared to large scale farmers.
Because we improve the whole community
The whole
and
community.
not just one
Not just
individual.
one.
But also I'm here thinking that large-scale farming is what improves the whole community, in fact, the whole country. Am I correct?
Very correct, very correct. Large scale farming is actually sustains the whole society at large because there is production in a massive way, which means there is more for food security and also more for profit making.
Do you agree with me?
At the same time, we are trying to run away from a point whereby we have a dependency, whereby all the people or all the people in the community are depending on someone to provide employment for them. Why can't they do it themselves? They can do it, provided they are given enough resources.
Okay.
As for the same large scale farmers, yes, they can offer employment to those communities that you are referring to, and actually make sure that whatever they need is embedded in that large scale production or large scale farming. Be it health, good living or good standard of living, everything is embedded in the large scale farming. Community development, in terms of infrastructure, all covered in there.
Okay. In as much as I would like to agree with you, let's look at the situation that we have as Africa. We need food. People are dying of hunger. So is it a good idea for us to rely on small-scale farmers, people who can only produce for themselves, instead of us to, divert all those resources to people who can feed nations? Nations, by nations I don't mean Zimbabwe only, I mean Africa at large. People are dying of hunger.
If you can check the logistics and the statistics, it says most of the produce that we export, it comes from small scale farmers. They contribute up to 60% of products that is being exported.
Okay, I'll let him help me on that. 60% of what we export or produce comes from small-scale farmers.
Right. That one is very debatable and argumentative theme, I said. Whilst I acknowledge that considerably small-scale farmers have actually came on board as far as production is concerned in Africa, or in Zimbabwe in particular. But to a large extent, we have seen scenarios whereby statistics or figures are shown out or are presented, but eventually, on the ground, there is no true reflection of the that production which we have been spoken about. Generally, we sing about high production in the under peasant farming or subsistence farming, but later on we'll see governments in Africa getting in to rescue people from hunger. So somehow it's more of rhetoric than the actual situation on the ground.
Yes, do you want to respond? Okay, so I'll ask you a question now, Mr. Moyo. Large-scale farming is related to high environmental degradation due to the use of big machines and use of artificial fertilizers and artificial methods rather of farming. So do you think it's beneficial to the environment and to the community as far as those factors are concerned?
Thank you so much. Large-scale farming is systematic. It's not randomized. So normally where there is large-scale farming, there is knowledge, there is technology, there is use of very effective and efficient ways of farming. So the higher production and the higher profits makes it sustainable to regulate the environment. The farmers can self-regulate the local environment. For example, they have got the capacity to then reverse the effects that come with that large-scale farming. If I compare with the small-scale farming, yes, it's done, but it's randomized. It's not well planned. There's not much knowledge. There's not much safety in the yield in as far as the farmers are concerned. But on the other side, that is large-scale farming, yes, there's safety, there is climate regulation. Those profits are then plowed to reverse the effects. That is to reclaim the land, planting of trees, whereas on the other side there's a lot of deforestation, land degradation, weathering, erosion, and those people, again, they do not have capacity to reverse those effects. So you're also talking about the use of inputs like fertilizers. Yes, there's much use of fertilizers, but it's done in a scholarly way, in an academic way. There's a lot of research under large-scale farming, whereas under small-scale farming, there's more of guesswork. African governments or African institutions do not have much resources in terms of material, human, and even financial to make sure that what they support is backed by much research or relevant research. Therefore, to a large extent, it's not very true that the large-scale farming comes with a lot of environmental impact. To a large scale, it's not very true.
Do you agree with him? Okay, why?
Because, take a look at it. How much will you need for you to neutralize your soil pH for maybe 10 hectares? How are you controlling it? You're going to put another inorganic fertilizer online or gypsum, that's inorganic, of which totally destroys your soil structure over years. As compared to small-scale farming, whereby you can use available material, you can mulch, you can use compost. By so doing, I think your soil is so resilient and the soil structure will be intact for a longer time. And the production, it increases just because you have all the raw material, you have all the nutrients that you need. Because for one thing if I can tell you, availability of too much iron in the soil will make other nutrients to be not available on your crops, to your crops. So by so doing, you need organic to neutralize what? Your iron, so that your nitrogen can be available for your plants. So I think heavy use of fertilizers or heavy use of inorganic substances cause a big damage to your soil.
He's saying they've got the resources. Okay, the other question is, the other factor, small-scale farming relies on human labor most of the time.
Yes, because if you take a look at it, most of our small-scale farmers, they rely on family labor.
Yes.
Yes.
So it means if that family has got only older people and babies, then there's no farming that is going to happen. They now have to rely on large-scale farming.
Not true. That's not really the case. You can employ, isn't we have, you can, you are,
When you begin to employ someone,
yes.
it's
just
not large.
No, it's not large, but we are coming with a solution to the problem that we have. We can be still using one year tip. If we get someone, we contract someone to be working there. It's still small scale farming. What changes is the system. What has changed is the system. We are just bringing a solution to a problem.
Okay. Do you agree with?
That one is the one factor of the population structure that we have in the most developing countries like Zimbabwe, whereby we have got a very large population in the rural areas, being the elderly, backed by the young, very young children. The productive age has since migrated from rural areas to the urban areas. And that is the productive age that can till the land. Farming comes with it. It involves a lot, it's labor intensive. So it's a hazardous occupation, which requires more energy, more, you have to be creative. But on the background that we've got the elderly and the children being involved more on that farming, it means automatically there's low production. On the other hand, it exposes them to a lot of health issues, safety and health issues. Remember, there are a lot of hazards which can come in form of economic hazards, chemical hazards, physical hazards, and even social hazards. That's all that package comes with farming. So, looking at the elder people and the young, it means it gives them a healthy burden to the governments. There's a lot of there are a lot of health issues that are most likely to emanate. It's on record that the safety and health issues are lagging behind under farming, particularly under the peasantry or small-scale farming. Children that are going to school do not have the capacity to utilize that land. So it dismisses then the fact that we can then safely say there is high production to sustain our country. That comes from that small-scale farming.
Okay.
If you take a look at it, the way he said it, he is referring more to communal farming than small-scale farming.
Really differentiate the two.
Communal farming is what he's talking about. It's mainly done in rural areas, deep down in rural areas. As compared to small-scale farming, that can be peri-urban. Those people with 2 hectares, 1 hectare. That's yes. You can do from that small scale. You can do chickens. You can do whatever. But as compared to communal farmers, if you take a look at it, most of the communal farmers, they only plow when it's rainy season only. That's what it's
okay. Well, at least I appreciate the dimension that you are advancing. You have to take into consideration that almost 75% of our population lives in the rural areas or in the countryside. And that's where most of our production is expected to come from. So whilst you are pinpointing on the small-scale farmers being strewn all over the periphery of the urban areas, but greatly they are dropping an ocean, so to speak.
Okay.
They are there, but the number is not considerable.
Okay. You want to engage? Or I can ask you. Okay, a question. Let's talk about the issue of balanced diet. When we look at large-scale farming, it's about specialization. Am I correct? You're only planting wheat, tobacco, or maize. But when we look at small-scale farming, there is a balanced diet. They've got a small portion for groundnuts, small portion for maize, small portion for what else? Yes, sugar beans, etc. But in your area, it's specialization, and most of the time it's about the money. It's about exporting. It's about mass production and making the dollar. It's not about balanced diet. So would you encourage small scale farmers to then rely on you when you are producing what they're buying from?
Thank you so much. Very true, there's monoculture under large scale farming. But let's remember that there's a specialization in agriculture, specialization in any, whether be it manufacturing industry. Specialization comes with it comes with efficiency and effectiveness. So for us to attain that balanced diet, we then have to specialize to say from this region or from this farmer, that's where we get our fat, our protein in form of beans, peas, all those leguminous plants. Then other farmers can then specialize in production of cereals, that is wheat, maize, rapoko, soya, and so on and so on. So that's the purpose of specialization in as far as farming is concerned. However, going forward, we have since shifted from casting rules in a stone, which means a commercial farmer is also allowed to have a small portion where other crops can be produced.
I was saying, and I'll say, in within a large scale, there's now a small scale farm.
There's no harm in a large for a large scale farmer to include something in the realization of that diet in our country. Moreover, as our government is statutes, it works with the laws that are passed by Parliament. So, working with the grain marketing board and the silo, they stipulate certain rules which guides in as far as food security issues are concerned. To say, out of your 100 tons that you have produced, how many are supposed to go to GMP so that you don't export everything? Out of so many hectares you are utilizing, how many of them are supposed to be left for what? Because we need to balance the diet. Thank you for the country.
If you want to engage, or we can now open the floor to everyone else. We'll come back to you guys. Yes. You have heard what they were saying. Do you agree with them? Do you have questions or additions or subtractions? Maybe additions or subtractions? Yes.
I'll go back to the fact he stated that he said 60% of agricultural produce is from small-scale farmers. And I'll challenge that with what 60% of what exactly are we exporting? As a country now, we do not have a net surplus in anything we're producing, be it beef, tobacco. Whereas when we were operating with large-scale farms, and you had the likes of Holcomb operating at their full strength, Leox, the tobacco sales force, even the winter wheat that was done in the Midlands province. We were a net producer, and we were competitive internationally in beef and tobacco.
Okay, let me just try to give you an example. You know Big Brother. Big Brother, how many large-scale farmers are being sponsored by Big Brother? And try to compare it with the outgrowers people that are being given chickens by Big Brother or Hamad. And try to compare the figures. At the end of the day, it's one person who is exporting, but who amongst the large-scale farmers and the small-scale farmers produced a lot of those chickens?
I'm not disputing what you're saying.
Yes.
What I'm challenging you on is the volume and the competitiveness on an international scale. Whereas before, when you had CSC working with commercial farmers, we were exporting our beef, and our beef was recognized. I think at that stage we were second in the world to Brazil. Currently, our beef, for example, is struggling. You've spoken of Hamara. Where does our chicken farming compare in contrast to the rest of the world?
Okay, so let me get this right. You are saying when the large-scale farmers were providing the products before, our rate was too high as compared to now. That's what you're saying.
Our production
Was too high.
was a lot higher, and we were more competitive internationally, and we were more recognized. In fact, at that stage, we were known as the bread basket of Africa.
Yes, I would want to just say something. We're the bread basket of Africa, but the people, this was, okay, we can say we're the bread basket of Africa, but the individual people, were they really benefiting from that? But now we are empowering them. Okay, now we're trying to empower them so that they produce their own food as well, in as much as we want to be recognized internationally.
Because we're saying by empowering communities, if you can empower 5 communities and they bring together their products or their produce, then we can now export that produce as maybe as Hamara. What do you think about that? Instead of one person producing masses, then exporting as is.
But is that doable though?
Yes.
Because you know, with people, you can't say, okay, 20 people by the 31st, please bring all your 100 chickens.
That's what is happening right now.
Yes, but we are not yet there. So I'm thinking also, if we give to one person, that can be faster. It's a long route to the same destination.
Okay.
I would say it's also more expedient for us to specialize, because one of the other challenges that are there in agriculture in general is climate. And when you have large-scale farmers, you would have things like seed planting.
For the sake of the debate, let's define small-scale farming as that farming that one does to feed their own family as well as to sell. Yes. They don't necessarily need to sell much, but yeah, because that's what Hamara is looking at. Okay.
Okay, I think I got lost then, if that's the dimension that you want us to take. I got lost then when he was bringing in the aspect of the 60% contribution towards the national maize stock for
The 60%
Not
was
for maize. It's not.
No, I just picked that as for argument's sake, if we were using chickens, I bought so much feed, I bought so many chicks for so much money, and then I sold it. How much did I make a profit or not?
Yeah.
Or are we talking about the communal farmer who's just saying, at the end of the season, do we have enough grain to last us until the next rains? I think that's the other determination that we need to make.
No, for you to be a small-scale farmer, the small chickens you produce in a year, as compared to one communal farmer, now we can compare which one is effective. One produced 20,000, one farmer produced 20,000 chickens, or a lot of farmers
Take too much of.
it's okay, it's okay.
If that's then the point that we are taking as a point of discussion, I think then I would want to add, it's very possible. But what we need to do is, I think this is the same that most of these guys that are harnessing the market and coming together and contracting farmers to small-scale produce. I think there's certain standards that you have to comply with. For argument's sake, if it's chickens, there's a minimum quantity in terms of the mass. There's a minimum weight that we're saying. If you're bringing your chickens to the sales, they should be so many kgs. And this is the same even for tobacco. When you get to tobacco flows, your tobacco is graded regardless of being a commercial farmer or a small-scale farmer. And the price applies, although it's questionable at times. But what I would want to push as a point in terms of supporting the small-scale farmers is it's possible. You know, within any industry, we have guys that know what they want.
Yes.
And we have some that are just taking advantage of the situation that is available. I don't know how far true that is, but if you look at the production side in China, you have all these other small guys that are producing a name by specifications according to standards, and then you have a merchant who then says, we have so much nails in China, and everyone in the whole world can buy. But specification, standards of production, material of construction, and all those things, if they are complied with.
Do you think small-scale farmers will comply?
Hamara's has made it work with chickens because of the short turnaround time for the small-scale farmer. In 6 to 8 weeks, he's turned around whatever income he's put in. However, when you get produce like your citrus fruits, for example, which take 3 to 5 years of growth before you start harvesting anything. For a small-scale farmer to survive in that time period, it becomes near impossible. However, a large-scale farmer can survive on things like commercial loans from banks and stuff like that. There are other ways that commercial or large-scale farmers can survive with products that take a longer period to grow. And I think to say we need both is very true, depending on the produce that you've got. Also, other types of products like tobacco, which are seasonal and require specialized attention at different stages, it becomes very difficult for small-scale farmers to produce high quality.
Oh, I like that. You want to add something? Does anyone want to add something? Okay, thank you.
Okay, we have got the peasant farmer or the communal farmer. Then on the other extreme, we've got the large-scale farmer. And the small-scale farmer is in the middle. So there's an issue of suffering, what I can call there's identity crisis. Up and until those farmers can identify themselves properly and correctly, maybe that's when we realize considerable input from them. Because they are too small to be called large-scale farmers. And on the other hand, they are too large to be called communal farmers. So you realize that when the inputs are coming or when the regulations are being formulated, there's a tendency of our regulators leaving them unattended. They rush and scrounge for those resources which are meant for the poor peasant farmers and try by all means to identify or associate themselves with the peasant farmers when the resources are available on that side. On the other hand, when the resources are available for the large-scale farmers, they also scramble for those. So that's the problem which I am thinking, or which I have since been realizing is taking place in Zimbabwe. So you cannot exactly, even as far as statistics is concerned, you can't figure out exactly sometimes as to what produce, what percentage comes from that sector. But you always hear the ministry clearly identifying the produce from the communal, from this other extreme and that other extreme, leaving the center. Thank you.
Okay. Your closing remarks. Okay, fine. You can respond to you.
No, I can just put on a point. If you take a look at small-scale farmers, I think it's easy to fund a small-scale farmer as compared to a large-scale farmer.
Easy or cheap?
Easy and cheap.
Then to say we then need to have some kind of what would you call it?
Balance.
Yeah.
Yes.
Where we have produce that we expect from small-scale farmers. And some of these things are then the things that we need to be discussing as we move on, to say which products or which produce do we expect from small-scale farmers. And the other thing then that we need from the regulators, the financiers, and also the agriculturalists
Yes.
as well, is then to give the maximum support. Because he speaks of efficiency, he speaks of good volumes, but these are being supported, as he mentioned. It's less risky to give a commercial farmer funding for citrus fruits, and it's a high risk to give a small-scale farmer funding for citrus fruits. So what we then need to have within the banking sector is also channeling the funds where we will get the maximum returns out of it. So in agreement to the point for the balance, I think we also need to be discussing this on other forums as well, where we're saying the financiers also need to understand, even if we do not have the kind of security that the commercial farmer has, but with the shortest turnaround for chickens, surely the small-scale farmer should be funded. So if we're going to have talk where we say commercial farmers are better than small-scale farmers, and we don't have funding and support for small-scale farmers, then it doesn't make sense.
Okay. Yes, your last question.
I'm just going to back what you're saying. I think as a follow-on to this, it's important that on farming and the different types of farming. So financing a chicken project is very different to financing a citrus fruit project or a horticultural project in terms of timelines and returns and risks and things like that. And I think our financing at the moment in the country seems to just move black as farmers.
Okay, thank you so much. Your last point, sir.
Okay, thank you. Yes, it's a very big and critical issue to compare the two, but it's very much developmental. However, at this juncture, let me call upon the small-scale farmers to show up. They must organize themselves, they must identify themselves, and prevail. Over and above that, they must declare whatever they produce so that they are known. Generally, the community or the society view them as being a selfish group that is dormant or passive. So people know more about the peasant farmers, know more about the communal farmers, and also know more about the large-scale farmers. But there's, in the middle, it's a bit quiet. They only show up when they want resources, then disappear without declaring anything. So maybe it is with our statutes, or it is with them to clearly define and organize themselves so that we can move forward. And they will then be seen in as far as contribution is concerned in agricultural terms. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Your last point, Mr. Tony.
I think if we can debate about this too.
Okay.
But actually, I'll just say, I can conclude by saying large scale still needs small scale farmers. Because there are some things that they can do that small scale farmers can do better.
For example, just one thing.
Just take a look at, like we were saying, we were talking about outgrowers. I think there is easy management when you're doing outgrowers. There is the quality from different people. They're doing small numbers, they're easy to manage. So I think we can consider all those, that if you can give 20 people and they're just managing 100 sheep, it's not as hectic as managing 10,000 chickens at the same time. So along the way, large-scale farmers will also need support from these small-scale farmers too.
Thank you so much, Mr. Tony. Thank you so much, Mr. Moyo. And thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Thank you so much, viewers, for watching. From this debate, I've gathered that both small-scale farming and large-scale farming is important. Yes, but we need to identify who the small-scale farmers are and what are they producing. And we also need to identify who the large-scale farmers are and what are they producing, so that they can both support each other. Yes, and also one speaker said financial institutions, they need to be educated about farming. Yes, about small-scale farming and large-scale farming, so that they can also finance small-scale farmers as well as large-scale farmers. So maybe our next discussion will be looking at the financing of farmers in general. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope this was fruitful. Have a good day.